There's a whole list of problems Blizzard's gonna have to deal with if they ever actually pull the trigger on Classic Plus. And I don't just mean make a good game and don't screw it up. I mean the unavoidable stuff that's baked into the project itself. The kind of issues that will pop up the second they release it, some even before that, and keep snowballing unless they tackle them head on. Because let's be real, just re-releasing Classic for the 100th time with a couple of new dungeons, a fresh zone or two, and maybe an extra raid isn't even in the same ballpark as what a successful Classic Plus needs to be. I've pinned down 6 big problems that Blizzard is guaranteed to run into, so let's talk about them. The first 3 points I want to talk about are things that Blizzard should deal with before Classic Plus even launches. Ideally, the sooner the better. The first one is all about mindset. Blizzard has to accept that Classic Plus cannot be just business as usual. They must not be cocky and be willing to learn. I say this because they have been cocky many times in the past.
And by the way, you don't want to do that either. You think you do, but you don't.
What players want is not another Classic re-release, is not another shitty seasonal server that dies in 2 years because being seasonal in the first place goes against the fundamentals of an MMO. And it's definitely not just another retail-style expansion. Classic Plus has to feel like something entirely new for them, something they have never done before and something we as fans never got. And Blizzard needs to get over its own habits to make this happen. The mentality needs to shift away from things like we'll drop a giant content chunk that makes everything else irrelevant, call it an expansion, and then watch as the game expands by making only 4 zones, 8 dungeons, and 1 raid relevant while everything else gets forgotten. Or we're gonna re-release Classic, slap on a few new gimmicks and elements that have nothing to do with the spirit of vanilla in the first place, and run it as a turbo progress seasonal realm until it shuts down in 2 years. Instead, their mentality has to become something like, we start with vanilla, we carefully build on that foundation, and whatever we add should stack on top of the existing fun, not replace it. The base game, and whatever we add after that, should keep mattering for the most part, even if Classic Plus ends up running for another 20 years. The cadence of content drops still needs to be decent, but the priority has to be longevity and cohesion. Every new addition should make the world feel richer, not delete yesterday's fun to make room for today's. If Blizzard doesn't get this part right, everything else is basically pointless. Because if most of their Classic Plus just ends up being a string of new endgame chunks slapped on top of vanilla, the mindset hasn't changed at all, and if that is the case, we'll reach a point where you could literally delete most of the original vanilla and nobody would even notice. It wouldn't be called an expansion, sure, but in practice it's the same thing. Just instead of wiping out all the content in one big patch, you just phase it out slowly, piece by piece. The second point is Blizzard's reputation. For Classic Plus to really take off, you need as many players as possible. That means Blizzard has to fix its image first. Let's be honest, when it comes to Classic and Vanilla fans, Blizzard's name isn't exactly glowing right now. In the 5 last years, all they've done is re-release the old expansions and give us 2 very shitty seasonal servers. Not only was that not bringing basically anything actually new to the table, but starting with the level boost in TBC and then the WoW token in Wrath, they somehow managed to make those expansions worse than they were the first time around. Classic era itself, it's basically been abandoned since TBC launched. Because now, I do not count re-releases like the Anniversary Realms or Hardcore as Blizzard showing love. Hardcore only exists because add-on creators and the community itself carried it. Blizzard just happened to cash in on it. Meanwhile, they're swinging at private servers. Servers run by teams 10 times smaller than them that somehow do a better job delivering the expanded vanilla experience than Blizzard ever managed. Millions of players call those servers home now, and Blizzard's answer is to try to shut them down. So far, Blizzard's track record with Classic is bastardize the later expansions.
Now let's talk about some changes. So one thing we looked at is Dungeon Finder, and it feels like how we envision Classic, Dungeon Finder is not a good fit for our community.
Let vanilla itself rot, and go after the people who are actually keeping the spirit of Classic alive. Not a good look. and a lot of players simply won't trust them enough to come back. They have to change that. I don't exactly know how, but they're a massive company with the resources to figure it out. I actually know, wait, just announce that instead of going after the people who run private servers that, on average, have offered better content than what Blizzard released in the last 15 years and trying to nuke them into oblivion, you'll take a different approach. Say, yeah, we're still going to use our legal power to shut these servers down, as we should and as any sane person understands we have to. But as for the people behind them, we want to talk. We want to hire some of them, or at least work with them, so their work and passion doesn't get wiped off and wasted. And so we can also finally hear from people who actually understand vanilla on a deeper level, something we clearly lack in our own team. That single move would show the community they're serious and they care about Classic Plus, and about respecting the people who've been carrying the torch all these years. It is not just within their reach and power, it is also pretty easy for them to do, and they would also win as well. A truly great Classic Plus can eventually make people forget this mess, but it would take some time, and a strong hype building launch matters just as much itself. Will they actually do that? Well, Blizzard has had a shitty reputation for so many years now, not sure if they even care anymore. The third point is the one I have the least hope for, and honestly, the main reason why I don't think Classic Plus will ever reach the masterpiece it could be. For me personally at least. Blizzard needs to start being original, not painfully predictable. They've got to stop taking cues from the army of classic World of Warcraft YouTubers who've been spamming the same wishlists for years. You know the ones. Every video is the same predictable rotation. Karazhan Crypts, Mount Hyjal, Uldum, Gilneas, Ashara Crater, Stormwind Vaults, the Caverns of Time, and so on. Rinse and repeat. Everyone copies everyone else and just regurgitates the same content, the same 10 favorite zones I want to see added in Classic Plus. But what if instead of recycling that exact list we've heard 1,000 times before, Blizzard gave us stuff that's actually unexpected, stuff that's cooler and we also did not see coming. Classic Plus shouldn't be a dumping ground for retail leftovers with a classic twist. It should feel like an alternate timeline of Warcraft that branches off from vanilla in a brand new direction. Not just a remix of things that came after vanilla ended or things that they initially wanted to add in vanilla but that we also all know about. They should be super vanilla and Warcraft friendly though, don't get me wrong. I'm also not saying they can't ever add something like Mount Hyjal or Uldum. They're on the map, it's part of the world, it makes sense after all. But for the love of God, don't open with that and don't focus on that. Add it to the game, sure, but make it different than what we know when you eventually do. Don't make the first wave of Classic Plus feel like a museum tour of things from future expansions. You're telling me that Blizzard has a full team of writers, world builders, and designers, and they just sit in a meeting room and go, yeah man, getting Mount Hyjal for the third time is gonna be so lit. Really? That's the big product of their labor. Aren't these people supposed to write things? Supposed to world build? That's literally the job description. Look, I'm gonna throw on the screen an idea I came up with for a new 10-man dungeon. I'm not talented, I'm not trained, and I do not get paid to do this thing 8 hours a day. Pause the video and read it if you want. If I can come up with that, they have no excuse. I'm not saying don't ever add any of that cut content. Some of it simply fits too well and should be added eventually. But let some mystery and intrigue survive. Don't be the stale content machine you have been lately. And the reason I say all of this is because we already saw this mindset in Season of Discovery. Karazhan Crypts, the Scarlet Crusade raid, we heard about them years before SOD was even announced. And right before they were announced, everyone predicted it, and then Blizzard delivered exactly what everyone expected. Nothing surprising, nothing fresh, paradoxically because it was technically new content, at least on paper. That's why I don't have much hope for this one. I don't know the order they'll do it in, but I'd bet my right nut that as soon as Classic Plus launches, we will start getting the same predictable zones and dungeons. Either things we saw later in retail, Things every classic WoW YouTuber's been parroting for years, or things that already exist on a dozen private servers. Look, for the Karazhan crypts example, leave the crypts as they are. Just open them up, add some creepy details and bits of lore, then let them stay that mysterious spot that makes you wonder what's lurking down there and makes you think. And that leads me straight into my next point. Abstain from killing the sense of wonder, mystery and realism in the world. There are a few things I really hope Blizzard avoids with Classic Plus for this one. First of all, not every location needs a gameplay purpose. Ashara, the Blasted Lands, Deadwind Pass, I think they're amazing because they barely have any quests or anything else of interest at all. Deadwind Pass has none. Yet when you first saw those zones as a kid, they felt weird and intriguing. You saw Karazhan's Tower and thought, what the hell is that? You saw the crypts, the ghosts, the tainted scar in the Blasted Lands, the portal in Ashara's water. And there was no quest to explain it. That mystery is what made them feel alive. I'm not saying Blizzard should add half-finished areas that serve no purpose. I'm saying just let some places exist without much more added to them. That will create intrigue and spark discussion. That's part of what made Vanilla's world feel real. I would actually be down for them to just shadow drop a new zone and say nothing about it. A zone that is mostly devoid of any quests but is cool as fuck otherwise. It's interesting, it's intriguing, it makes you wonder. This also ties into quest hubs. One thing I hated in every expansion after Vanilla, especially from Cataclysm on, is how gamified questing became. Every zone got 1 or 2 quest hubs where all the NPCs stand shoulder to shoulder and all their objectives are stacked up in the same spot so you can knock them out all at once. It kills immersion when every place plays exactly the same and is clearly gamified for your convenience. Some zones benefit from that design, like the Shimmering Flats. It's basically a giant patch of land, but because most of Vanilla isn't built that way, the flats stand out and people look forward to that efficient quest grinding section. If every zone was like that, it would be boring and break the feeling of a living world, and would also make the Shimmering Flats objectively the worst zone in the game by far too. It would be so immersion breaking. So yeah, let the world stay a little bit wild. Keep zones that aren't about optimal questing. Give us quests that send us out into the world instead of just clustering everything around the hub. That's how you keep the world immersive, mysterious, and worth exploring. The last two issues are probably going to be the most controversial. I get why some people will disagree with me on this, but I'm going to be honest, I still think I'm right. First up is a huge dilemma. Let's say Blizzard nails everything else before starting on Classic Plus. Everyone on the team is finally on the same page, everyone finally understands that Classic Plus needs to expand the world, not just replace it. Some things will be easy to handle, but others get tricky pretty fast. How many new zones can you realistically add? 100 new zones and it's literally impossible to keep them all relevant. Some will be forgotten no matter how well Blizzard designs them. The same goes for new dungeons, raids, gear. Go far enough down the road and older content gets left behind. It's inevitable. So how do you deal with that? This is one of the biggest problems Blizzard will have to solve. And I don't have the free time or knowledge to draft a full design document that fixes this issue forever. But I do have an idea that I think buys them a lot of time and also comes with many other benefits as well. Before I explain though, I have to say this. You can't realistically make this problem disappear totally. Vertical progression has pros and cons. Horizontal progression, the dream most of us have for Classic Plus, has pros and cons too. Horizontal MMOs handle this issue much better, but they're not immune either. So, here's my idea. Raise the level cap to 70. Hold on, don't scream at me just yet, let me explain. First of all, keep in mind that Vanilla itself was supposed to have 70 as the level cap in the first place. They just did not have enough time to add all the content they wanted before the game was released in 2004. I say we do things in a way that, in most respects, changes nothing. With some smart math and good balancing, Blizzard could raise the level cap from 60 to 70 and still let players level from 1 to max without really noticing any difference. You'd still be able to go through the same zones at the same pace, do the same quests you did back in 2019 and in 2004 in the same amount of time. The only real change is that when you're done with all of that, you're level 70 instead of 60. That just means adjusting XP gains, mob stats, quest rewards, item level ranges and stats. Basically a huge amount of small number changes all over the place that add up to a seamless experience. Yeah, it's not an easy task, but hey, that's where being a growing, huge, multi-billion-dollar corporation comes in handy, right? So how does this fix anything and why it's worth the trouble? Well, here's why I think this is a great idea. Those 10 extra levels create room to slot in new zones, new dungeons, maybe even leveling raids if that is something that could work in Classic, but I'm not sure about that. Everything shifts apart just enough that you get natural gaps to fill with future content later on for anyone interested to explore these new things. For example, on the Horde side, the gap between Ragefire Chasm and Wailing Caverns would widen by a level or so. Suddenly, there's space to comfortably fit a new low-level dungeon. On the Alliance side, the gap between the Dead Mines and Black Fathom Deeps gets a bit wider too, probably still around the level. And since doing Shadowfang Keep or Wailing Caverns on an Alliance character usually isn't that exciting anyway, you could easily add a small unique dungeon there for them as well. Near the endgame there's that awkward stretch where you either do the first half of Blackrock Depths or rerun Sunken Temple, which no one's really that thrilled about. Spread that levels out a bit more and that gap becomes a perfect spot for another high level dungeon. The same logic applies to everything else, to zones, to raids, to anything. And then there's class balance. After all, they need to rebalance the specs a bit, right? A level cap bump would naturally come with a light spec retune. Not the train wreck we saw in Season of Discovery, just modest tweaks to make meme specs a bit more viable. 10 extra talent points alone are more than enough. And it even opens room for new flavor spells that don't usually change your main rotation, but add personality to each class and spec. I also think that the psychological new era effect that this will bring will be a positive if the game is good. Even if the game barely changes for someone who chooses to not explore any of the new content, a new cap feels like a fresh start. It's not the perfect fix and will not last forever, but it buys them a lot of time, and I also see no reason not to do it. And for the last one, I think horizontal progression is going to be one of Blizzard's biggest challenges with Classic Plus. They've never really done it before. Sure, during Dragonflight and The War Within, they kept talking about wanting to make evergreen content, but we all saw how that went in retail. They clearly didn't pull it off. They need to figure out new ways for your character to progress that aren't just new raids or new loot tiers. And those systems need to be there from the very start. That's not easy to achieve, but the good news is that there's no real ceiling here. There's so much they could do. What I hope they'll do, and for once I'm a little optimistic about this, is that they will steal ideas from other games. That's literally what Blizzard was always good at, taking something that already worked somewhere else and making it much better. I hope they do it again, and I really hope they're looking at OSRS and even at private servers for inspiration. Both have done a way better job than Blizzard at keeping a classic style MMO relevant for many years. Vanilla, in my eyes, is still the best MMO ever made, at least for the stretch of time where you can still progress your character. But once that progression ends, it's a different story. Say you play Classic for 2000 hours. You clear everything up to Naxxramas, you're full best in slot. Those first 2000 hours are the best MMO experience anyone has ever created. But after that, if you keep playing, Classic starts to feel worse with every passing hour compared to other old school MMOs. OSRS, to me, isn't as good during those first 2000 hours. But after that, it's way better. Because you can still progress your main character instead of being forced to either play another character from level 1 or just raid lock forever. On a typical Classic progression server, you can squeeze maybe 1 or 2 good years of fun from it. And that's great, but then what? We already know we don't want another seasonal throwaway server. And we don't want expansions either. We need something else. Just adding new raids doesn't solve it. Even during those first 2 years, once you hit max level, Most of the game is just raid logging and farming gold. The 1 to 60 journey, the pre-raid grind, your first raid clear, that's peak MMO magic. But everything after that, Classic just runs out of gas. So what do they need to add to the game? Not just make future content not invalidate old content, but also add new progression paths. For example, professions should be something you can keep working on for a long time, and the rewards should feel worth the investment. There should be quest lines tied to professions, more rare recipes that are tough to get, and maxing a profession out should feel like an actual achievement that took a lot of dedication. On top of that, more professions should be added. Things like jewel crafting, survival, inscription. And I think the cap of how many you can learn in the first place should also go up from 2 to 3 professions or even 4. Professions are just an example though. The same logic should apply to anything else in the game. Gold making would naturally become more important too, because with more meaningful professions, you'd have more valuable items in circulation. Another example, since Blizzard already planned housing for vanilla before it was released more than 20 years ago, added to the game now. That alone could also open up a couple of new professions and systems to work on, and give players one extra thing to do. Even things like new mounts or tabards could be added. They should still be pretty rare, stay true to vanilla spirit, and require some real effort to get, but they should be there and they would give players another goal to chase. And of course, there shouldn't be just one fixed path to progression. Raiding should stay the backbone of character power, like it is now. But everything else, professions, gold making, whatever, should matter a lot too. How Blizzard could actually pull all that off is a huge topic on its own. And that's what my next video will cover. It is a huge topic. It needs a video of its own. So if you like nerding about that stuff just as much as I do, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it. For this video though, that's it. What do you guys think? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear them. If you stuck around all the way to the end, a huge thanks to you. And please don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, peace.